What does it take to build a groundbreaking medical specialty from scratch and to sustain a loving, adventurous marriage for more than 6 decades? Today's guest, Dr. Michael Chapman, is a pioneer of modern trauma surgery, a leader who shaped healthcare systems, and a man whose personal philosophy, rooted in commitment, respect, and making every day a good day, offers lessons for both work and life. His story is one of serendipity, purpose, and love that has stood the test of time. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and executive leadership coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. So let's make it a great one. Today's show, I have been looking forward to this conversation for some time to interview my longtime family friend, Dr. Michael Chapman. And I have a little bit to tell you about Mike, and here it is. Mike is a pioneer in his field as one of the founders of modern trauma surgery. After serving as chief of orthopedic surgery in the U.S. Army in Belgium and Germany, 1968 through 1970, he joined UC San Francisco in 1971, where he helped establish the orthopedic trauma subspecialty and co-founded the Orthopedic Trauma Association. In 1979, Mike became chair of UC Davis's Department of Orthopedic Surgery, serving for over 2 decades before retiring in 2000 as the inaugural holder of the Michael W. Chapman Chair, where he remains active as an emeritus professor with consulting privileges. As you can imagine, his professional achievements are many, including 190 publications, including the landmark 5-volume Chapman's Comprehensive Orthopedic Surgery, now in its 4th edition. He has 8 U.S. patents for bone fixation systems, has given 589 invited lectures, and has had 56 visiting professorships, 11 of which international. Mike has had leadership roles with numerous major medical organizations, including the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Board of Orthopedic Surgery, to name a few. He has received multiple awards throughout his career, including the American Orthopedic Association Zimmer Award for Distinguished Contributions, and the UC Davis Medical Center Surgery and Emergency Services Pavilion were dedicated in his honor. He has been listed among America's best doctors in multiple publications, and this year was named Pillar of the Orthopedic Profession by the American Orthopedic Association. Mike has been married to his wonderful wife and life partner for 64 years, Betty. Together, they have 2 adopted sons, enjoy kayaking, golf, gardening, and adventure travel. His personal interests include German language and culture, and he was formerly an avid skier and mountaineer. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
All right, everyone. As Mike knows, that is the abbreviated version of his bio and his vita, and so much to talk about. As I said before the show, we've had many conversations over the years, and I was actually reflecting, and you may remember this, the publication of the first publication of your multi-volume piece of work coincided with the time that I became licensed as a psychologist, and we in California, and we shared a meal together up at the lake, and it was a very special time, and that was 25 years ago.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
A lot more than my first. Well, that's about right. Yeah, my first edition was 1987.
Oh, so would this may have been the second edition?
Could have been the second edition.
Okay, this is 98. I'm thinking this was 9. Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
This is 2000.
Oh,
No,
okay.
this is 2000.
That was the third edition.
Oh, okay. Well, that goes to show you that's already been around a long time. I was
Yeah.
just a newbie. I was just a newbie at the time. Um, Okay, so where I wanted to start was with your what got you into medicine? Like what was the road to medicine in general before even going towards a specialization that did not even exist at the time?
Okay, well, let me back that story up just a tad because it's interesting. I was born and raised in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And when I say Upper Peninsula, everybody, that's that upper part north of the Lower Peninsula that has Lake Superior on the top and Lake Huron and Lake Michigan on the bottom. It is rural America in the middle of nowhere. And my father was a traveling hardware salesman and came from a family where he was the first high school graduate. My grandfather had a fourth grade education and was a barber. On my mom's side, it was a different story. They had 13 kids in their family. My grandfather was uh, the was a he was the headmaster at the railway station in town. He also had a fourth grade education. But what I noticed in the family, my mom had 10 sisters. And before the Depression, he started sending all the sisters to Teachers College up in Marquette, which was a 2-year curriculum. And because these girls went to college, they all married college men. And then the Depression came along, and beginning with my mother for the next 5 daughters, none of them went on to college. And we were a very close family, had many, many reunions. And what I noticed pretty quickly at those reunions was that the culture of the college educated families was different than the culture of my family and the non college educated families. Now, I must be careful. I'm not downgrading the culture of my family. It
Hmm. Hmm.
was a wonderful family, well educated people, very informed, all that. But there was a difference. And so I made up my mind at that time that I had to go to college because I aspired to be like those guys.
Hmm.
My dad was essentially a blue collar worker selling wholesale hardware, and these guys were store owners and lawyers and that sort of thing. So when we got to California, the my uh, sport that has consumed my entire life since I was 5 years of age is snow skiing. And I couldn't afford to do it. In fact, for the first couple of years we were in California, I didn't even know there were mountains here that had snow. And in order to afford to ski, I joined the ski patrol. So, beginning as soon as I was 18 years of age, I started working on the volunteer ski patrol up in the mountains. And of course, that immediately put me in the position of rescuing broken up skiers on mountaintops and transporting them down the hill.
Hmm.
So that's what prompted my interest in medicine. That was the first go. And
And that's when you started practicing trauma
that's
response
exactly
right
right.
there.
I started off in orthopedic trauma.
Right.
You're
On
exactly
the
right.
mountain, right.
Yeah. Well, it's a long, shaggy dog story from there, but I'll skip that and just say so that led to my attending medical school at the University of California, San Francisco, and subsequently specializing in orthopedic surgery, as those were the docs that took care of busted up skiers.
Well, and what I found interesting from previous conversation is you were on your way to dental school, or you thought you were on your way to dental school, and you thought that you didn't have the stuff for medical school.
That's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the shaggy dog story.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
actually,
that's a good
yeah, I'd
story.
act,
Let's go there. Let's go there.
okay. Well, the I had a very close friend, Tom Chan, who's now passed away, and he and I were very, very close study mates, and we turned out to be very successful students. We both graduated number one, number two from American River College, and and that's a 2-year college, typical community college. And we were accepted to UC Dental School out of community college after only 2 years. And middle of the summer, we were already starting to buy our equipment and look for a place to live. And Tom came up to me and said, Mike, you and I have really always wanted to be physicians, but the reason we didn't do that because we didn't think we had the stuff to do it. But I think that you and I proved that we have the stuff. And he said, I don't want to spend the rest of my life just working in the mouth on teeth. So I'm dropping out of dental school. And I
Mm.
said, You're going to do what? And so I said, Well, if you can do it, I can do it. So I dropped out too. And we went on to UC Davis together and actually did extremely well there, as you would expect. And were accepted to medical school after our third year of undergraduate at UC Davis.
Hmm.
And it went from there.
Yeah.
Um, Tom ended up at a different medical school where he graduated number one in his class and ended up being a clinical professor of dermatology and internal medicine at Stanford University for his career.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's that story.
So when did did you know when you went to medical school, did you, from those experiences on the slopes, did you imagine yourself going into orthopedics and or surgery?
Well, I always thought about it, Dan. The thing about medical school, if you're a typical medical student, you fall in love with almost all the specialties that you rotate through during your junior and senior year, which I did.
Mhm.
So I vacillated back and forth, about what I really wanted to do with my life. And at the time, orthopedic surgery in the 1950s, 1960s, although we did a lot of surgery, a predominant part of our practice was non surgical. And most of the orthopedic surgeons got into the field through sports injuries of their own,
Mhm.
got treated by an orthopedic surgeon, and decided, I think I want to do that. And of course, sports medicine's a big part of the field. And so the as we went through, I always had orthopedics in the back of my mind. And unexpectedly, in my senior year, just out of the blue, the Department of Orthopedics offered me a position as a resident in their program. And so that kind of cinched it. I said, yep, that's what I
Mm.
want to do.
Mm.
And that was a really good choice. So, because the
Yeah.
field fit me perfectly.
Yeah, we talk about these things that just happen out of the blue, and just makes one wonder, right? First, so Tom, you're on your way to dental school, and Tom's like, "No, no, hey, let's do this." Okay. And then you have all these choices with all the different specialties or residency specialties that you can go into, and then you get this offer, right? So I guess one place I didn't think I would go this early in the conversation is how, in all the things that have happened in your life, how do you see these things as showing up as opportunities? Like how do you perceive them looking back?
Well, it's interesting. I wrote a little small article. There's our main journal for orthopedic surgery internationally is the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery, based in Boston, and 100-year-old journal these days. And they have a little section at the end. And what's the name of that? Orthopedic Perspectives, or that's I've got the wrong name. But anyway, it's an opportunity for people to write about non-orthopedic topics and philosophize and complain. And I wrote a small article that's called "A Serendipitous Career."
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, what serendipity is, it's when on a journey you have unexpected encounters that prove to provide benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the story of my life is serendipity. And
Wonderful.
so all along the way, my life's been driven by serendipity. And of course, the secret to serendipity is to recognize that you've encountered something that has potential benefit and
Mm-hmm.
then to take advantage of it.
Yes.
Because a lot of people
Yes.
don't see it because they're not looking or they're not open minded. And then a lot of people just, sometimes that requires risk taking, like the decision I made to drop out of dental school. which was a
Mhm.
big risk.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
and I think of, we've talked about serendipity on the show, it's come up, and also, I would say somewhat of a synonym, synchronicity, this whole idea of, as you're talking about being open, like, many people think that these opportunities are all around us all the time, and the difference is the people who are kind of looking for them or aware of them or seeing them as opportunities when they come up, as opposed to just keeping our head down, staying on our plan. I said I was going to go to dental school. I'm going to dental school. Like trying to like take a step back and be open to other possibilities.
Yes, absolutely. You know,
Okay, so you started practicing trauma on the mountains before medical school. Then you're doing your rotation and you're being trained in orthopedics and as a surgeon. When did like what was the transition to trauma, to the new subspecial, like how did that become an actual entity? And I'm just curious when you became aware of that and how much you drove it versus you found yourself in it.
well, it's a little of both. And well, the story there is that trauma care in the United States was not well organized prior to the Vietnam War. And by that, what I mean is if you lived in a big city, for example, and were involved in a serious automobile accident, say downtown, okay, um, what would happen, say, in 1950? Well, someone would call the closest hospital or ambulance company, who would typically be a private company, and the drivers aboard that would not necessarily have any sophisticated training such as paramedics and emergency medical technicians have today. And that ambulance would come pick you up. In the ambulance, they're just transporting you. So, and you're not getting any medical care to speak of. You might have gotten a splint on a broken bone, maybe. Okay, so where do you end up? You end up at the nearest hospital. Well, the nearest hospital might be a specialty hospital for delivering babies or treating kids, and they may not necessarily have a really sophisticated emergency room. And at the time, there were essentially no trauma centers. Well, the Vietnam War changed all that because what the military discovered during the Vietnam War were a couple of things. Number one is that if you have highly trained paramedical professionals that can go out to the scene of the accident, in this case, out on the battle line where the soldier was injured, and you rendered highly sophisticated care there, such as starting intravenous lines and giving the victim fluids, that sort of thing, and then rapid transport with in this case a Huey helicopter to a frontline sophisticated trauma center with specially trained people to address your particular problem, which was trauma. And that revolutionized the the care of soldiers um, during our wars. And that model then transitioned to civilian life
Mm,
here in the United States during the late 1960s into the 70s and early 80s. So when I came out of the military, oh, and I should mention that my training was very heavily skewed towards trauma because I had 18 months as a chief resident in the two big trauma hospitals in the Bay Area, San Francisco General and Highland Alameda Hospital.
mhm,
And so when I came back, the job I had was as the assistant chief at San Francisco General Hospital. And they were one of the pioneers nationwide, along with Maryland Shock Trauma and a few others,
mm,
for founding an emergency medical system. So, what that meant was that the entire city organized, established trauma centers in just certain hospitals. In San Francisco was only in one, San Francisco General. And then they set up an emergency medical transport system with highly trained personnel. And everybody agreed that there would be a triage center that would determine where that injured person went. So if they were severely
Mm.
injured, they came to us at San Francisco General. So when I hit there, that was just being organized. So I became a member of a team that established one of the first American College of Surgeon level one trauma centers in the United States.
Hmm.
And San Francisco was way ahead of the rest of the country because they had already organized an EMS system after the big earthquake in 1906.
Hmm.
So it gave them a jump ahead. And I'll tell you a little quick side story on that. As a resident, my ambition was to be a specialist in putting in artificial joints, artificial hips, artificial knees. And during my training, they were not being done in the United States. The pioneers were in England. So prior to my stint in the military, I did 3 months of special training in artificial hips in London with the full expectation that I'd return to the United States and be an artificial hip specialist, a total joint specialist. Well, when I got back, it turned out that they still weren't doing them. And it had to do with the licensing of the glues that were used to put them in. And they had just opened up some research centers, three in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I couldn't participate because I didn't have a research number.
Hmm.
So when I ended up at San Francisco General, I was already trauma trained. So I just said, well, to heck with that. And besides, trauma was fun and
Mhm.
challenging, and
Mhm.
we could really do things for people.
And
So,
then serendipity again, you're at
yeah,
the hospital, which is the most progressive in the United States.
right. And
Yeah.
then what happened from there was F. William Blaisdell, one of the pioneers of trauma surgery, was the chief of the trauma center at the time. And 10 years later, he was recruited to be the chair of surgery at the new University of California, Davis Medical School, which had been founded 10 years earlier. And Bill looked at the situation. We were the county hospital at the time. We were an absolute perfect location for the primary inland trauma center for all of Northern California, Western Nevada, and Southern Oregon. And so Bill recruited a bunch of us from San Francisco General to join him in founding the Level One Trauma Center in Sacramento.
Mm.
And the two of us were the key players on that. And so they honored us by naming the medical school library after Bill. So we had the F. William Blaisdell Medical School Library.
Hmm.
And they named the new 500,000 square foot surgical pavilion, which contains our level one trauma center and all of our operating rooms, after me.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
I told them that was a really bad idea because this was a great opportunity to get some rich guy to give him $100 million to name the hospital after him. But
Not
they,
after you.
but I said, yeah, you're wasting. I mean, you can't waste this kind of an opportunity. You don't
Uh,
shouldn't do that. But they didn't take my advice.
that's an honor. I mean, a big honor. And for those of you out of state, UC Davis Medical Center is in Sacramento, California state capital. So, and that's where you have spent the majority of your career and your adult life at this
Correct.
point. Um, so another arc in your story, a through line, is leadership. Like early on, I mean, you join in the military, you're chief. You come back, you're immediately assistant chief, and then you go on to Davis, you're chief, and you spend your whole career as chief. He's done a lot, and all in leadership. So this is the way to go into leadership. And the question that I had asked you in a previous conversation was, did you seek it out or did it find you?
That's an interesting question. And in preparation for today, I wrote down a number of questions
Mm.
that I thought I would ask
Hmm.
that maybe you and I can mutually answer. And from my personal experience, I have answers for them. I have no idea whether they're correct, But the first question is there such a thing as a born leader?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to that question is no. I don't think there are born leaders. However, I think there are certain personality types that are essential for good leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to look at it that way, yes, there are people who are born with certain personality characteristics that tend to make them good leaders. For example, if you're born an introvert who prefers to hide under the bed covers reading comic books, as opposed to being in front of a large crowd at a lectern being a leader, you know, you're not going to be a leader.
No.
So the next question is okay, let's say you have those personality characteristics and you sort of naturally, people look to you and you end up in leadership positions. Can training improve those people? Can education improve leadership? And my answer to that question is absolutely yes,
Mm-hmm.
because the American Orthopedic Association today, we have two big associations. The American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, which is for all members who are board certified orthopedic surgeons, has about 40,000 members nationwide. And the American Orthopedic Association is the organization that founded the Academy, and it's an organization of leaders. It has about 2,000 members, and it sees its major job today as training the leadership for the orthopedic profession.
Mm.
And they had a mini sort of MBA course for leadership at Northwestern University in Chicago. That was one of many opportunities that I took advantage of during my um, period of time in professional life, and I found that to be enormously helpful. And then let's see. The other thing about leadership that's interesting, of course, is that there's good leadership and there can be really bad leadership, of
Yes,
which
sir.
we are in the midst of some interesting examples of that. And the and, one of the things that always flusters me is how do people become bad leaders, and how on earth why are they successful? And by successful, I mean that they have a large following.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's probably another question, another discussion for another day, because
Mm-hmm.
that gets into the whole issue of cultism and
Mm-hmm.
cults
Mm-hmm.
and the leadership of cults. And then the final question I had on my list was, what's the best way of measuring the success of a leader?
Mm.
Okay, and I have my answer to that, but let me come back to that. In answer to these questions, let me go back and tell you a couple quick stories. I came from a very modest lower middle class family with no previous examples amongst my um, uh, parents or grandparents of leadership. They were just good, solid citizens raising their family and doing what they were supposed to do as good citizens and parents. And interestingly enough, although all of I have four brothers, there's five of us in my family, four brothers and a sister. All of us went on to college, but our parents had no aspirations for us at all. And my father moved a lot. We were born, of course, I was born in 1937 into the end of the Great Depression, and then through the unsettled period of World War II. And in order to keep his job, my dad had to move off. And so my sister and I, by the time we moved to Sacramento in 1949, she and I had moved 11 times.
Wow.
So we had never been in a school at any time for much more than a year. So when we get to Sacramento, which is another story, in 1949, Um, the first school I went to was seventh grade. And then in eighth grade, I was at Arden Grammar School in suburban Sacramento. And at the time, of course, in eighth grade, all the women, and I call them women, they're old enough to be menstruating and be very, very mature.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was 5 feet tall, a little tiny guy with no secondary sexual characteristics. And I was an absolutely horrible athlete. I could not see a ball, catch a ball, hit a ball. And I was the new guy at the school, having just floated into that class. And our school was a very cliquey school. And to shorten this conversation down, I'll skip that part of the conversation. And something happened that year that I have no understanding of. About 2 months into the year, we had a big class gathering to elect class officers. And I got elected president of my eighth grade class. And I have absolutely not the foggiest idea why that would happen.
Clearly, your height and your athletic ability probably was just it was all that.
Yeah. Well, a good example of that is the star of our class was this really 6 foot tall, blonde haired, blue eyed, handsome kid who had all the eighth grader women hanging on his arm, who was one of these guys who lettered all four sports in high school. And we used to have after school um, pickup ball games. And at one of these games, I was always the last guy to be picked for baseball, and I'd be stuck out in right field. But one afternoon, this guy, we got down to the last guy who was me, and he said, I don't want Chapman on my team.
Mm.
He says, I'll just leave right field empty.
Oh,
And
crushing.
I broke down in tears and
Yeah,
ran all the way home crying.
crushing.
And so what I didn't understand at the time, okay, why wasn't Jerry elected president? How come me?
Mm-hmm.
And 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 and
Do
I
you have
have
an
no
answer?
idea,
You don't
huh?
to this day. You
I
don't
have
have.
no idea. But what I did notice after that, and I know that our time is limited here, so I'll skip a bunch of stories. But um, for some reason, I tended to float into leadership positions along the way, and and I'm not, as of today, I'm not certain why.
Hmm.
Um, other than the fact that I'm pretty good in front of a crowd, and I have no, I'm not shy about being behind a lectern.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and I guess people have never intimidated me.
Hmm.
So I felt comfortable in all arenas of leadership. And I've held the leadership position of two international organizations and three national organizations here in the United States. But
Mm-hmm.
the one that was the most challenging for me was the when I was the chair of the University of California Davis Foundation. And the foundation is a group of about 40 members from the community who are mostly alumni, all of whom, of course, who were highly successful. They were CEOs of big corporations in Silicon Valley. These people were all quite wealthy. And they were on this foundation as a civilian advisory board to the chancellor and responsible for promoting the image of the university and helping it raise money. And we also managed the university's endowment, their their fund. And that was a whole new experience for me because my previous leadership experience had been entirely within academia. And all of a sudden, I was plunged into this world of high powered business leaders.
Mm.
Um, and that I found to be a very, very interesting experience because all of these people were highly powered leaders of major multi-million dollar corporations. And to be plunked in the middle of them uh,
Mm-hmm.
was a very, interesting lesson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so one of the questions I asked was, how do you measure the success of leadership? And I had two mantras that I followed as chairman of the Department of Orthopedic Surgery in a large medical school. And the first was that I measured my success by how successful the people that I was leading were.
Mm-hmm.
If they were successful, then I was successful.
Mm.
And then the other job, that's the so-called leading down things. You're leading the people that are
Mm-hmm.
subordinate to you. And then within a big, huge organization like a university campus, you have to lead up,
Lead up. Mm-hmm.
lead up. And my basic principle there was whenever I went to administration with a problem or a challenge or a request, I never went into the office without 4 solutions that I had pre-selected that would meet our needs. So the idea was when I walked into their office, hopefully they wouldn't see a complainer or
Mm-hmm.
people who brought them problems, but rather somebody who brought them solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found, of course, was that the leadership in most cases would select one of those solutions that I brought them.
Mm-hmm.
So that worked out.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of the principles I followed.
I um I like those. Going to your questions, back to your questions. Number one, I agree with you. I mean, at face value, when you said, "Are leaders born?" In my head it was yes, but when you broke it down, it's the characteristics of individuals that lend themselves to leadership more than others. So I do totally agree with you. Um, Number two, can leadership be taught? Yes, leadership abilities can be taught, but I think it is the interaction of number two and number one that go together to really create an effective leader. And there are some people, because of different skill sets, that just their leadership can only go so far or be so impactful for a variety of different personal and contextual reasons. You give the example at the foundation, being in academia versus being in the private sector, there's different environmental demands and rules that go on there. So number three, you point out that there are people who are quote successful leaders. They have a big following, and they're not necessarily doing some good things. Does that make them a successful leader? And what that made me think of is charismatic leadership. And one of the most memorable classes I had at Davis, which was psychobiography, and where we studied in depth different leaders through a psychobiological perspective and the characteristics and the circumstances. And the big debate was, if you use your leadership abilities for bad things, are you still considered a great leader, whether you're Hitler, whether you're some of the
Yeah.
others? And there's a similar debate in the field of creativity. If you use your creativity for bad, are you still a highly creative person? So again, like you, we're going to leave that for another conversation. But I think we have to acknowledge there are many charismatic leaders, and just because you're a charismatic leader, it doesn't mean that it's going to be used for good or that you have the ethics or and all that goes with it.
Right.
I I and I really like what you're saying about the outcome of leadership. It's like, how are the people you're leading doing? And I think that is a distinguishing factor for leaders who are focused on themselves versus leaders who are focused on developing those that they are leading. Um, so I completely agree with that. And the second part of what you said is my experience of seeing you in different leadership positions over the years is you are sound minded, you're a critical thinker, you're a problem solver, and you lead with purpose in the sense of purpose of the activity, purpose of furthering the agenda, purpose of moving something along, not just leading from a lectern.
Yeah.
You always come in with a solution and a plan to propose to the decision makers, and I think that's a huge um, variable and differentiator.
Hmm.
Um, where I want to go, where I want to dovetail this is to life. There's leadership and there's life. And
Yeah.
when I've been thinking about this conversation over the months, um, that I thought about asking you for it, even before I did ask you, I was thinking about like leadership and work and in life, and then the philosophies of life that come with this. Because over time, what I have seen or my perception of you is you live and work in a similar way, and it's how you go about things, and it's a philosophy of how you conduct yourself and how you see the world. Again, this is my perception, so I'm going to be asking you this. So how do you see how one lives their life? How is that intersection for how you've lived your life with the values that you have brought to leadership, or vice versa?
Okay. Um, well, I would think I'd make maybe 2 or 3 points there. The first is I don't believe in having a bad day. Okay, every day's a good day. Now,
We're going to talk about in a moment something that's helped you get to that
okay,
place. Yes, yes, yes.
and so every day's a good day. As um, when I go to bed at night, I have this routine of always, my head's on the pillow, reviewing the day. And I start off, let's see, well, I got up at 8 o'clock. What did I have for breakfast? And, what did I do today? And how did the day come out? And there are several goals that I have to meet if I'm going to be happy with that day. And the first is that um, I don't want to depart this day with having made anybody unhappy. So one big goal is to live life in a way that makes everybody around you happy, enjoying life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number two is I have to accomplish something every day. And so I make that little list. In fact, this is something that has played a big role in my life, and I should give credit to it. And that is that, and the person that started this was Betty.
Betty.
And you're no doubt aware of Franklin Covey in Salt Lake City.
Yes.
And the back in the middle '80s, when Franklin Covey first came out with its day planner.
Yes.
So there's
Iconic.
my
There it
my
is.
Franklin.
For those who are just listening and not watching, there is a real legit Franklin Covey planner right here.
Yep,
Black leather bound.
yep. And let's see. I'll show you a. Let me show you a typical day if I can find it. Yeah.
While
Okay.
you're
So
finding
here.
it, I want to tell everyone that Mike is a very active and productive person for anyone who knows him. Yes,
Okay.
there it is. We've got we've got lots of stuff on
Yeah.
that day.
So there's.
Yes.
So you know, on this side, that's what happened during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This side was the list of what I wanted to accomplish that day.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, how did I do that day? Well, about half the items have a check mark, and the other half got forwarded. But anyway, so I've maintained a day planner like this, following the Franklin Covey principles since 1987.
Mm.
And so when I go to bed at night, I'm basically reviewing my day planner for the day. And so you got to finish the day making people happy. And number two, I've got to have accomplished something that day that is productive and moving my life or the life of the organizations around me or the people around me
Mm.
forward.
Mm.
And the um, what else can I add to that? Well, I would say those are probably the two core principles. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that I don't believe in having fun.
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and as you're well aware, Betty and I have led a very privileged, adventuresome life with a ton of travel and interesting experiences.
Yes.
And so, it's okay to have a day that's totally focused on, enjoying, the environment of Portugal, for
Mm-hmm.
example, as opposed to being productive that day. But
Yes.
anyway,
Yes. a productive adventure
A
important.
productive adventure, yeah. Because
Yes.
because because
Yes.
experiencing other people, other cultures, other countries,
Yes.
that's education. So
Yes. Yeah.
that's
A
and you're
huge
opening
part
the
of
doors,
yours
right?
and Betty, a huge part of your and Betty's life
Yeah,
together
yeah,
is that
correct.
adventure. Well, you just took me to Betty, and I was going to talk about relationship because we had a conversation a few years ago now when I was over a few years ago when I was preparing to be to marry my niece, who you know very well.
Yes.
And we were talking about I was just talking about what I was going to say and a sermon, so to speak. And you were offering your perspective at that time. You probably had only been married about 61 or 62 years, not 64. And you were talking about the things that you feel are responsible and necessary for a successful long-term relationship. And I was wondering if you can share what you think those secret ingredients are, and what you and Betty have experienced for decades.
Um, well, okay. Well, it's interesting because I just had this conversation with some 20-year-olds,
Mm.
and we were exploring the differences between relationships today amongst the youth and our day.
Hmm.
And as you well know, they're very, very, very different. Um, and in my day, the average age for a girl to marry was 20, and a male was 23. And Betty and I happened to get married just when the pill came out, but prior to that, sex was a big problem because of the risk of pregnancy. So, relationships were entirely different. But anyway, when we got into that, the the one of the key questions I asked these young people was, tell me why you lived together for 10 years without getting married. What's going on? And interestingly enough, the first thing that came out of this person I was talking to, who's a relative of yours, was you don't have to make a commitment. And the thing that's interesting about that, if I were asked, okay, what's the most important feature other than love, of course, okay,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
got to like somebody.
Yeah. Well, and preferably love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Where you
yeah,
get
yeah.
married. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to love them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you got to like them. You got to like to be with them. But if I had to pick one word that might be the most important determining factor, it's commitment. You have to be committed to the relationship, and you have to be committed to making the changes in yourself, being sufficiently flexible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to make the relationship work. And then the second word is respect. And that is, not only do you have to have respect for the other person in the relationship, but they have to have the perception that you respect them. And of course, that word entails a whole bunch of things
Hmm.
about how you speak to people, how you
Hmm.
treat them,
Hmm.
how do you share things, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so, um, what else can I stick in there that's the most important thing to a long term relationship?
Commitment and
Commitment,
respect.
respect, love,
Yes.
um,
The trifecta.
and of course, well, and then of course, really helpful is of course having um, um, strong mutual shared values and activities in life.
Yeah.
Um, it is possible to have a very successful marriage where the man golfs every weekend and the woman goes out with the women and they don't have a social relationship. Um, but I think it can be better than that.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, you guys are an example of your career when you were officially still working, took up a lot of your time, and you traveled for work,
Right.
but also Betty was always there. And on the weekends, when you weren't working weekends, I mean, you had your activities, you have your different groups, you have your languages, you have your, by the way, they're yodelers, they're professional yodelers. I've heard it. I haven't heard it in several years, but there's just so many things that you guys have done together and enjoy um, doing together. When I see you, when we are around each other and you are getting into your kayak, or when you got your hiking sticks and you guys are going off. I mean, without a doubt, when one is without the other, what do we all say? Mike, where's Betty? Betty, where's Mike? Like
Yeah.
we're like it's which happens, but you guys are together because you love being together and you've shared so many experiences, and it's role models for all of us around you to see that connection and the relationship. And it is really aspirational. When I texted you and you responded back 64 years, and I said that is awesome and inspirational, I really meant it. Being just about 27 years in of full marriage in mine, plus extra years behind that, it's it's just astonishing to think of. Like, I'm excited for the next several decades, and to think as long as you're in it, it seems like a long time, but there is so much to go. There's so much growth and so much experience to have. And I guess so. There's a question about growth. What would you say about, because we're not the same. I mean, we're the same when we start, but we grow as individuals. We grow in partnership. Any comments or perspectives from growing together all of these years?
Well, it's interesting. The relationship, even across 64 years, as you well know, is always evolving.
Hmm.
And there's always a new challenge or circumstance that changes the nature of your relationship. And well, one example is which you're aware of is I've had a fatal disease for 9 years now.
Yeah, that's where we were going. This helps with there's only good days. Yes.
Yeah, the only good
Yes.
days.
Yes.
And so I mean, I've been under treatment for a particular kind of lymphoma for 9 years now, which is a medical miracle that we're talking today.
Hmm.
And that's been tough for Betty, um, and has changed our relationship because she's become much more of an important caregiver for me, for
Hmm.
example. And so the relationship is always evolving.
Hmm.
But if you go back to that key word, commitment
Yeah.
and flexibility, you know,
Hmm.
you work it out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you make it work. And the but just for your viewers and listeners, I'll just tell you quickly. I knew that critical to me was that whoever my partner in life was going to be, they had to be an active outdoors person and skier. And so I thought the best place to meet a woman was on the ski slope. And I was working on the ski patrol at Sugar Bowl in 1950, President Weekend 1959. And this beautiful young woman was down in the line who was obviously skiing alone. She was up there trying out for the UC Berkeley ski team and didn't make the team, so she had the afternoon off. We rode up in the chairlift together. The chair broke down. We had a chance to talk together for 40 minutes. And but she was from a very conservative, highly religious family, and the only thing I got out of her was the fact that was her name and the fact that she was a freshman at Berkeley and was living in a residence hall. That was it. So that weekend, I go home, and as I'm passing through Sacramento, I was in medical school. I was a freshman in medical school. Betty was a freshman at Berkeley, and as I'm on my way home, I stopped on my way to back to San Francisco. I stopped by my parents' house, and I said, "Hey, mom and dad, I met today the girl I'm going to marry." And
uh,
I have a slight problem. All I have is her name, and I know she lives in a residence hall in Berkeley somewhere.
we didn't have
And
AI. We didn't have AI back then just to find
no,
her. No.
no, no. So anyway, it was I pursued her. She
Yes.
was in love with an engineer at the time, which was a bit of a problem.
Hmm.
But anyway, uh, Yeah, another part of the story. The month I proposed to her, she got proposed to by 2 other men. How's
I
that?
I do know that. That is Betty, Betty, Betty. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Special,
anyway,
special person.
so after 2 years of hard work, it worked out, and
She
commitment paid off.
she chose you. She chose you over those other guys.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'll never forget that. That
Yeah.
yeah.
That was important. That
When
was
I go to
important.
bed each night, I say to myself, I grab Betty and put my arms around her, and I say,
Mm,
"Thank you for picking me."
mm, mm. Oh. Speaking of this journey that you've been on with cancer and cancer treatment, I wanted to wind us down with talking about life force, like your life force, your will to live. It was probably what, about a year ago now, when you had to make the decision to have a very invasive, well, I don't know if invasive is the right word, but a very potentially
Dangerous,
dangerous and debilitating were the two words I was thinking.
right?
Dangerous and debilitating, um, painful, and with no promise on the outside. Well, even if you came through it on the other side, that you wouldn't necessarily have the same personality, the same brain functioning, same cognition, everything, which is you. And I'm wondering, like, what is that drive for you, that life force in you to make a decision such as that? And of course, here you are on the other side, still very much Mike.
Yeah. Well, that's an easy answer. It's Betty.
Mm,
Um, I'm gonna have a tear.
mm.
The most important thing in my life, Dan, is being here for Betty.
Mhm,
So when we had to make that decision, that was easy because um, if I didn't do that, I only had 3 to 6 months to live, and um, I'm absolutely committed to being here for Betty
mhm,
and providing everything that she wants and needs in life, which includes my love.
mhm,
And so to me, it was my only chance of prolonging my life so I can have more time with Betty. And so
beautiful.
that
Yeah,
was it.
yeah. Well, you guys have been an inspiration to Liz and I and all of our extended relatives who are also your family. Um, to all of us, that's what you guys are, and have always been pillars. You got the pillar award. The two of you are pillars to the family. The relationship is, it's 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 consistency. It's what we depend on. Like I said before, like, Mike, where's Betty? Betty, where's Mike? It's just this,
Mhm.
you guys go together, and you go together more than physically. It's a connection that we all feel, and we all feel the love, and we all, I mean, with each other, but we all feel the love, from you to all of us. And it's just also a tribute to you that you have always been Dr. Chapman, renowned pioneer in this other world, and you're Mike to all of us, and you're Dr. Chapman when we all need you to be Dr. Chapman in those times. Um, but it really speaks to your authenticity as a human being. Is you just, in my experience, you live true, whatever that means. You live true.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more we could talk about, but I think that's a really good place to bring this down. And I'm just glad, we had to have this conversation, and have this conversation, that there's so many wonderful conversations that happen and that you have with so many people. And I always just wish they could be held onto, and they could be saved, and they could be there to access when we're needing some wisdom, we're needing some guidance, we're needing some caring. And so we got it. We did it. We took a lot of scheduling, but we made it happen.
Well, thanks, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a real privilege to talk to you. Very enjoyable and a lot of fun. It's been a good day.
Been a good day. And I have to say, I do, I review my day at the end of the day too. And
Uh,
yeah, I have a, yes. And I'm going to think about all that you've said and take it in. And I'll look forward to seeing you shortly.
okay. See you at
Yep.
Echo.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Dan. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
Alrighty.
Mike has been an inspiration to me, my family, and our extended family for a very long time. And I am so glad we were able to sit down and learn from his lived experience and lived wisdom and the philosophies that have guided him. And now that we have this to share with all of you, here are 5 key takeaways from our conversation. Number 1, serendipity rewards the prepared and open-minded. Opportunities often appear unexpectedly, and success comes from recognizing them and having the courage to act. Number 2, leadership is about lifting others. True leaders measure success by the growth and achievement of those they guide, not by their own titles. Number 3, life philosophy matters. Living each day with purpose, striving to make others happy, and accomplishing something meaningful are cornerstones of fulfillment. Number 4, commitment and respect sustain relationships. Love alone is not enough. Long-term partnerships thrive when partners are devoted, flexible, and respectful. And number 5, purpose fuels resilience. Facing life-threatening illness, Mike's will to live is rooted in his devotion to his wife, Betty, and their shared life and journey together. This show has been about Mike, and as I just said in the end, it is also about Betty, an amazing human being who has touched so many lives. And apart, they are amazing individuals, and together, they are even more. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being a part of our community and your 5-star reviews. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.